students need to realize how their brains are working. They need to realize what kind and what types of thinking is taking place inside their brain. Hi everyone, welcome back for another episode in Adventures of Comprehension. My name is Sierra Harris and I am the author behind Sierra Harris Teaching. So thanks again so much for joining. Your first agenda checklist thing to do tonight, right, is to let me know you're joining me. So comment below and let me know that you're here. Let me know what grade you're teaching. Let me know where you're from, and we're going to jump right into it. So tonight, again, we're going to be talking about 5 ways that you can help your students achieve deeper level comprehension. So let's dive into number 1. Number 1 is to make sure that the reading is about them and not the text. This is huge. Every time a student reads a text, they need to know that they are reading it not just to understand the text, but to take something away from the text. They need to know that reading is not about the book, but it's about them. It's about how books and words and the meaning behind everything that is written in that text is going to transform them as a person. How does this text inspire you? How does it change you? How does it make you think? How has it changed your thought process from before you read to after you read, right? It's all about me. It's all about them. They're in the spotlight. We so many times put the text on the pedestal. We put the text in the spotlight, when in reality, it should be in reverse. It's about the reader and what the reader can take from that text. That is where we're going to get that deeper level comprehension. How do we do this? How do we kind of transform or change the way that we get our students to think about a text, right? To get them to think about themselves rather than the story itself. Well, we can do this through reflective processes and specific questioning strategies, as well as, of course, focusing on reading strategies. If you are a follower of all things Sierra Harris Teaching, you know I preach to the ends of the earth that reading strategies, things like visualizing and synthesizing and metacognition and asking questions and making connections, those strategies involve the reader. Main idea, character, setting, plot, theme, none of those involve the reader. Those are text-centric. We want to be student-centric, right? We want to have the student at the center of the conversation. We want the student to be the one to focus on what do they get out of it. So if we're focused on things like visualizing and making connections and asking questions, then we're actually involving the reader himself or herself, of course, right? That's what's happening. So here is kind of the hierarchy of how you can ensure that your students are getting to where they need to be. 1, we always want to ask questions about what does the text say? Okay, that's right there, black and white, right there type questions. What is the text telling me? Then after that, we want to ask questions about how does the text work? This is the structure, the breakdown, the ins and outs of the text, the vocabulary, things like that. Then we want to ask how or what does the text mean? Now we're ensuring that we're making meaning of this text. All right, that needs to happen too. And then finally, the top level is what does the text inspire you to do? So I'm not saying that you need to ask those 4 questions every time you read a text. Those 4 questions are almost like question categories. There are tons of questions that would fall into those 4 question categories that you could ask. But the important thing is that when you're having a conversation about a text, that you kind of want to follow that hierarchy. You want to start at the beginning and you want to make sure that you're getting to the end. It's that last level, that inspiration, that big takeaway. That's what we forget to get to. That's what we run out of time, or maybe we didn't even know to get there at all, right? We fall into one of those categories and then it gets left behind. And so what we're left with is a student or a class of students reading a text, and it's all about the text. We want to make sure to give them an opportunity to make it about them. Okay, we can't jump straight into that. We got to make sure we're getting them there, right? We want to make sure we're making sure that they understand the text, that they've made meaning of the text, they know how the text works, and then we're going to make sure that they have some kind of takeaway that is about them. Another way to think of it, instead of the 4-question category hierarchy thing, there should be a name for that, right? Another way we can think about it is these 3 different levels. So you want to make sure you're hitting literal questions, right? Those right there questions. So think literally. Then you want to think interpretively. I don't even know if that's a word. Interpretive. You want to read between the lines. You want to make inferences. You want to use context clues to dig into that vocabulary, figurative language, things like that, right? And then the final one is applied. So this is where you want to read beyond the lines, right? You want to read past the story itself. We're comparing, we're judging, we're evaluating, we are recommending, we're making decisions, all involving ourselves. So the 4 questions and the 3 levels, they're both the exact same thing. It's just 2 different kind of ways to think about it. All right, ready for number 2. Idea number 2 in ways that we can help deepen our level of comprehension with our students is to teach metacognition. I mean, literally teach it. Have a week blocked out, just like you would for main idea and making inferences. You have a week, preferably towards the beginning of the school year, and you teach metacognition. Students need to realize how their brains are working. They need to realize what kind and what types of thinking is taking place inside their brain. If they aren't realizing what's happening, then they're not going to be capable of deeper level thinking, because they may think that they're thinking now is already deep level thinking. So this kind of comes in all forms. So if we want our students to dig deep, right, they need to know that they are and are not doing just that. When students are aware of their thinking, then they can determine their own level of understanding. They can say, I didn't understand this. I found myself questioning a little too much, so I need to go back and reread. This is powerful as a reader. This is one of the most powerful strategies we can teach our students. And it helps them to strategize and then be able to think critically when needed. So I like to break metacognition down as a driving metaphor. This is my famous way of explaining it. So think about when you get into a car. Okay, you get into the car and you sit down. What are the things that you do before you drive? Well, you probably put your seatbelt on. You adjust the mirror, right? You put the key in and turn it. Maybe adjust the radio. Maybe if you have kids in the car, you turn around and make sure everyone's buckled in and safe. So there's a whole process to this. I like to relate this to before reading. So what are the things that you do as a reader before you read? Well, those are things like, have I assessed my schema? Have I got my background knowledge? Have I kind of gone through that and got it ready to go? Another thing may be, have I determined the reason or the purpose for reading? Do I know why I'm reading this? That is essential. Another thing could be asking questions. What kinds of questions do I already have? And then finally, am I ready to read? Just as simple as, am I ready to be focused? Do I have distractions out of place? Do I know what my intentions are and what I need to get out of this? Boom. That is your before driving metaphor for metacognition. Now, of course, if we have a before, we have to have a middle and an after. So your middle would be while you're driving. Clearly, you're looking through the mirror, right? You're reading signs on the road. You're watching other drivers. You're driving. You know the process. So what does that look like for metacognition while we're reading? Well, the things like this. Students who are reading are thinking, do I need to adjust my speed? Just like you do when you're driving, that's something students need to be aware of while they're reading. Do I need to read slower because this is a difficult section of the text with, higher order vocabulary, or, there was a change in character or scenery or something happened here, and I'm just want to make sure that I'm really understanding. I'm going to slow down a little bit. Am I an engaged reader? Am I actually engaged in this text? Am I using strategies? Am I being an active thinker? Am I putting myself into the story just as much as the author is giving back? Am I using fix-it strategies, right? Am I making sure that I'm using context clues when I come to a word that I don't know? There are a lot of things that students can do with their metacognition while reading to ensure that comprehension, especially deep-level comprehension later on, is going to happen. And then, of course, at the end of driving, right, we take our seatbelt off, put the car in park, yada, yada, yada. The end level metacognition would look like, what level is my confusion? Am I confused? If so, how confused? What are my big takeaways from the text? What are my lingering questions? And then what are my next steps? So I love having kind of this driving metaphor breakdown for students to follow, because I feel like it's really easy for them to kind of make that connection that these are things that I need to be thinking about during the whole process of reading. So teaching metacognition from the get-go and then utilizing their understanding of metacognition every time they read has to happen. We cannot achieve deeper level comprehension if those things do not occur. Hey everyone, so sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure that you are loving the content coming from Sierra Harris Teaching on YouTube. So make sure, if you are loving this, to subscribe and also like and comment below. I would love to hear from you. All right, jumping in to number 3, the third way that we can help our students achieve deeper level comprehension is to ensure that there is more discussion and more modeling. These are so important. I put them together. I could have separated them. They could have each been their own, but I had more things that I wanted to talk about, so I combined them to make it quicker. So, as I said before, there's not a secret formula, right? There's not a secret formula that I'm going to be able to give you to magically allow your students to comprehend on a deeper level. It takes time. It takes intentionality. That's a big one. You have to be intentional about wanting your students to comprehend deeply. These things have to be focused. They have to be thought through, and you need to know what you're doing to know what your students are going to get out of it. For example, modeling. You can't just read a book aloud and randomly think thoughts, okay? Modeling out loud when you're doing a read aloud up front, whether it be a picture book or maybe you're reading a novel out loud to your students, those are ample opportunities for you to be able to model your thinking. And every time you model your thinking, the students are going to mimic that modeling when they read. I've been watching my teacher read and model her thinking out loud, and she is always doing surface level thinking. She's thinking about the main character and their, what are they doing and what they're thinking. And, yes, maybe they identified some traits and they asked a few questions, but then that's all I'm going to do when I read. Okay, that's what reading means to me. So, but if my teacher is being intentional about the type of modeling he or she is sharing while reading, then I'm going to be more intentional and more critical about my reading and my thinking when I go to read my own book. And then the other side of this is the discussion. Reading is not a one-sided street. Deeper level comprehension takes multiple perspectives, multiple ideas in a pot and stirred. And we need to figure out which is right, which is wrong, or, rate them or evaluate them. So discussion has to happen in order for that deep level comprehension to take place. So modeling and making sure you're being intentional about your modeling and ensuring that students have ample discussion time after reading or during reading even. Number 4, this is so important. Number 4 is make sure you're choosing a text that is worthy of deeper level comprehension. Not all texts are worthy, okay? And I call these texts the Sarah and Henry texts because Sarah and Henry are, your basic names. And a lot of times when you see those stories, there's not a lot to them. There's not any kind of experience or emotion or motive or takeaway that a student is going to have to even achieve deeper level comprehension. So when we are doing lessons, we need to make sure that we know in this lesson, I do want them to practice deeper level comprehension. I want to try that. I want to practice that today. So I'm going to be very intentional about the text that I pick. And I'm going to look for a text that's going to give them some uncertainty when reading. Something that's going to give them a productive struggle. And then through that, we're going to have deeper level comprehension. So if we can't come up with extreme revelations and deep level comprehension ideas and takeaways from a text, what do we expect them to take away from it? So be very intentional about picking the texts that you put in front of your students. We're ready for number 5, our very last thing today, of ways that you can help students achieve deeper level comprehension. And of course, this one, ask the right questions. It's that simple. Asking questions is a learned skill by teachers over time. Probably 70 to 80% of time, those questions are going to be right there questions. They're going to be closed questions where there's one right answer. In order for me to ask the questions that's going to achieve the deeper level comprehension, I need to think through those questions ahead of time. Those aren't spur of the moment type questions. So again, it goes back to intentionality. I need to be intentional about the text that I'm giving them, and then intentional about the questions that I'm asking. I want to ask more open-ended questions. More questions where there are multiple answers, multiple perspectives, multiple parts in the text that I need to analyze to be able to draw a conclusion. I don't want the closed questions. I don't want hands in the air. All right, I always tell my teachers that I coach, if you have a classroom where your students are throwing hands up in the air and they're so eager to answer the question, you're asking the wrong questions. That's validation for you. You think, oh, I'm so proud of them. They all know the answer. Then move on. Why are you asking those questions? They all know the answer. Don't waste your time. Ask the questions where they don't know the answer. Be brave. Do it. I promise you, you're going to find your students love having that moment of what, how, when, where, why. And they don't know and they want to figure it out and they want to talk through it. But again, it takes the right text, it takes the right questions, it takes intentionality, and it takes the students understanding that the text is about them as much as it is about the text itself. If you have any questions about deeper level comprehension or any of the pieces that we covered today, happy to answer any of them. Drop your comments below and let me know. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I'm super glad you were all here. And I hope that you had a takeaway. If you had a takeaway, let me know below. I want to hear what your biggest takeaway was tonight. Those make me happy. They help keep me coming back because I want to know that we together are making an impact for our students. So thank you so much. And I will see you again next week